After 30 years of pain, my 3 children laughed. What they discovered changed everything forever. Tom stared at the splintered beams of the attic, a cavern of lost dreams looming above him. Dust motes danced in the fading light, but all he saw were the architectural sketches tucked inside forgotten boxes, his envisioned masterpieces that never saw daylight. The architecture degree wedged in his past felt more like shackles than a foundation. Every odd job he took across town chipped away at his body, but the pain paled in comparison to the ache in his soul. He had promised his children a better life, a more secure future, yet here he was, a handyman in a world that had long since forgotten the artistry he once aspired to embody. Hannah, Jake, and Lily were downstairs, their laughter a bittersweet reminder of what he had sacrificed. At 16, Hannah was a creative whirlwind, the kind of child who could paint a room in vibrant hues. Yet Tom often dismissed her dreams, fearing they'd lead her to the same disappointments he faced. Jake, the pragmatic one at 14, had his head buried in books about engineering and design, while Lily at 11 was still blissfully unaware of the looming struggles. Tom felt a jolt of panic each time he heard them dream aloud, wrestling with a knot of guilt that twisted in his stomach. Was he setting them on a path to a future he'd only built in shadows? As he rummaged through mementos, Tom's mind spiraled into a tempest of doubt, grappling with his feelings. Could he push his children to pursue dreams he himself had abandoned? Or did protecting them from failure mean stripping them of their potential? Everything buried inside him stirred with emotional tension, weighing him down more than the boxes of forgotten aspirations. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. He swallowed hard, vivid memories of his architectural critiques echoing in his mind. You can't escape the foundational structures you build, his former mentor had warned him once. As he stared at those dusty sketches, the truth hit him. He had become a structure himself, constrained, broken, arms just barely holding his family together. Yet what good was a stable home built on the ruins of his ambitions? The walls felt like they were closing in, and despair gripped his heart. Then, the children's playful shouts transformed into furious whispers, summoning him down from the attic. There, in a moment that painted dread across his face, he caught sight of their grandmother's journal, the sketches flickering between pages like ghosts of his past, timeless designs he had almost forgotten. How could they bring life back into this dusty world while he remained a mere observer? The weight of unfulfilled dreams hung around him like a smothering cloak. Yet, in that instant, a whisper of hope flickered in his heart. Would this discovery ignite a fire in his children that he had long since quenched in himself? What would he do if they wanted to pursue the legacy he let slip through his fingers? The thought twisted like a knife. He could no longer deny that a reckoning was approaching, and with it, a decision that could alter the very fabric of their family's story, forcing him to face his deepest fears. Tom descended the creaky stairs, the journal clutched tightly in his hands, an anchor to the stirring thoughts of his old dreams and a harbinger of his children's aspirations. He could hear their indistinct chatter mingling with the sound of crayons scratching against paper. Each voice brought him closer to a decision, a reckoning of sorts that felt long overdue. In the living room, he found them scribbling furiously, the pages filled with designs and elaborate structures, each marked by a spark of creativity that echoed the hopeful visions of his youth. For a moment, he stood transfixed, watching one child after another take such joy in their creativity. Hannah's radiance, Jake's meticulous sketches, and Lily's indomitable spirit seemed to weave a tapestry of boundless possibilities. Yet at the same time, his heart thumped with anxiety. Did he have the right to squash their dreams with the weight of his own failures? It wasn't their fault he had abandoned his passion. They deserved the freedom to chase theirs. A tremor of self-doubt slithered into his mind. Was he a fraud, a man who would stifle his children's ambitions simply because he couldn't pursue his? Jake broke the silence, looking up at him with an eager expression. "Dad, look at this. I thought maybe we could build a model of a new bridge for the school project. What do you think?" Tom's stomach twisted, struck by a paralyzing realization. Here was his son, embodying the very passion that he had allowed to slip away. "A bridge," he murmured, his voice barely above a whisper. "Yeah, it should be able to hold a lot of weight and look cool too." Jake's excitement brightened the room, but Tom felt the walls leaning closer, a pressure pushing him down. What was he waiting for? He faced his son, determination battling uncertainty within him. "You know what?" Tom said, pulling up a chair beside Jake. "I think you could absolutely make that work. Bridges, if designed right, can connect people in incredible ways." In that moment, the rationalizations that had shackled him lost their grip. He pulled the journal from under his arm and spread it across the table. This was my mother's. It has the designs for some of the bridges she admired. I've kept it hidden for too long, but maybe it can inspire us as you create yours. The children leaned closer, their eyes glinting with curiosity, soaking in the sketches faded with time. Hannah's fingers traced the intricate lines of a drawing. "These are beautiful, Dad. We could use these ideas in our project." The enthusiasm in her voice was infectious, and as they began to discuss the potential of the designs, Tom felt a shift within himself. Was it too late? Did he have the power to reclaim his own dreams alongside them? That evening became a whirl of activity. Sketches scattered across the table, laughter mingled with brainstorming sessions, and a palpable sense of renewed purpose filled the air. Tom found himself walking alongside his children in a way he had thought was impossible, rediscovering passion through their eyes. But beneath the joy, another wave of dread washed over him. What if they one day faced the same fears he had? How could he prepare them for a world that could be unforgiving? As they closed their sketches for the night, fatigue settled in, but his heart raced with questions. Just as hope began to bloom, his thoughts intermingled with doubt. Could he safeguard them from the struggles of abandoning dreams? He lay awake that night, pondering the complexity of his decisions. The weight of the journal felt heavier beside him, a reminder that choices could illuminate pathways or trap them in darkness. Each child's dream brought him closer to self-acceptance, but also a confrontation with the fragility of ambition. The sun rose, glimmers of new beginnings cascading through the window, and an idea crystallized in his mind, a plan to nurture their talents while also rekindling his own. But as he turned toward the day ahead, a nagging feeling gnawed at him. Would his intervention lead them toward paths of fulfillment, or spiral them into the very despair he sought to protect them from? With renewed determination, Tom stood at the threshold of possibility, ready to confront the unknown. The moment of truth felt imminent. Would he lead his children toward their destinies, or would he fall back into the shadows of fear? The future lay before him, a canvas awaiting the first stroke. Tom stood in the kitchen, the bright morning sun illuminating the scattered sketches on the table, each representing a promise. As he brewed his coffee, he caught glimpses of doodles, brief yet profound visions for bridges that would connect not just land, but dreams too. Each line sparked his determination, igniting a fire that had long dormant within him. Yet, buzzing beneath the surface was a persistent anxiety, the fear that by nurturing his children's dreams, he could inadvertently lead them to hardships he wished to shield them from. After pouring a cup, he decided to face the day with clarity. The journal lay open nearby, filled with echoes of his mother's artistry, but today it felt like more than a relic. It was a blueprint of possibility. As he glanced over the delicate sketches, he reminded himself that unlocking his passions didn't mean risking his children's futures. it was the very catalyst they needed. His mind began to form a plan, not a rigid structure, but a sustainable approach to inspire both himself and his children. He envisioned a weekend workshop filled with creativity and exploration, a nurturing environment where they could experiment with building models reflecting not just bridges, but their future aspirations as well. This was not merely an idea for a school project, but a chance to create, to connect. He could guide them while simultaneously discovering his own route back to fulfillment. With a deep breath, Tom called his children together. They shifted their attention from their drawings, unified in their eagerness to support one another. He laid out the plan, voice steady as he spoke. What if we use this weekend to build more than just models? What if we learn about engineering, design, and art together? We could create a project that showcases all of our ideas. His heart raced as they processed the concept. Would they embrace the challenge, or would the weight of expectation stifle their enthusiasm? Hannah's eyes lit up first. "Can we use those sketches?" she asked, pointing at the journal. The spark in her voice ignited something deep within him, and he nodded, understanding that the legacy of creativity he had longed to pass on was finally spilling forth. "Yes, and not just that. I want to learn alongside you. We can mix our ideas, our different skills. We all bring something important to the table." The triumphant chorus of cheers washed over him, the estrogen-laden excitement from his daughters blending with Jake's animated notions. As their voices melded, Tom felt an exhilarating rush. This was his moment of renewal, a step toward both reconnecting with his history and openly sharing the journey with his kids. While conversations flourished around details for their workshop, a disquiet crept back into Tom's mind. Would he be enough? The specter of failure cast a shadow over his burgeoning excitement. The last thing he wanted was to dredge up his past disappointments, making him question his capability. Yet, he pushed the anxiety aside. He would not relive his fears, but transform them, turn them into teachable moments. The most compelling lessons stemmed from imperfection and determination, and he could lead them through this space. As the day wore on, Tom took confidence from the collective enthusiasm, stepping boldly toward the role of mentor and collaborator. Yet, in an unexpected twist, thoughts of that dark past resurfaced. The pressures of societal expectations, the dismissive attitudes from his peers, and the ghostly memories of ambition slipping from his grasp. Could he steer his children away from the burdens of similar experiences? With newfound clarity, he felt resolve replace uncertainty. It was okay to show vulnerabilities, to admit he didn't have all the answers. He was embarking on a journey shaped by both triumph and struggle, not just for his children, but for himself. As the evening fell, a day filled with laughter and discussions came to an end, setting the stage for the weekend ahead. But as he tucked the journal back under his arm, the weight felt heavier than before, as if a pivotal revelation loomed just beyond the horizon. The shadows hadn't vanished, they lingered, hinting at challenges that awaited. Tom couldn't shake the feeling that guiding his children would also mean confronting his past. Was he prepared for that confrontation? Would the discovery unveil insights into himself he wasn't ready to face? The dawn of a new chapter teased him, and it became clear. The time had come to face not just the development of their dreams, but the shadows of his own reality. Tom awoke the next morning with a sense of purpose tinged with underlying trepidation. As the sun spilled into the kitchen, the warmth felt almost foreign against his cool resolve. Today was not just another Saturday, it was a launchpad into uncharted territory for both himself and his children. He poured another cup of coffee, the rich aroma grounding him amid a whirlwind of thoughts. The workshop idea had taken root, but as he skimmed through his childhood sketches, a rising anxiety crept back in. Memories flooded in. Encouragement quickly lost to critics, visions crushed under the weight of skepticism. Who was he, a father now, to suddenly become a beacon of creativity? His hands trembled slightly as he reached for the journal, its pages infused with fragments of dreams past. Jake's laughter jolted him from contemplation. He peeked into the living room where his son was attempting to convince his sisters that they could create life-size models. The innocence in Jake's optimism stung with nostalgia. It reminded him of his own ventures, a boy's ambition mixed with blooming poignancy. How could he nurture this spirit without letting his own failures overshadow it? "Are you ready for this?" Tom called out, trying to quell the tempest within. "Ready as ever," Jake shouted back, his enthusiasm genuine. Tom nodded, summoned by the infectious energy radiating from his children, yet within him lingered a great uncertainty. Would he rise to this occasion, or fail spectacularly as he'd done before? The trio gathered around the kitchen table, adorned with sketches, construction materials, and gooey globs of paint. The planning session began with a rush of ideas, an electrifying exchange of visions illustrating bridges that intertwined their individual dreams. Observing their interaction, Tom felt a pang of joy, but it was soon accompanied by the old specters, his fears, rattling their chains in the corners of his mind. "Dad, what's your bridge gonna look like?" Hannah's bright eyes sought out his response, unknowingly piercing through his defenses. He hesitated, feeling his throat tighten. I don't know yet, but maybe it'll be something that represents connection, something that ties together our passions." "Like a dream bridge?" she queried, her intrigue palpable. "Yes," he affirmed, and in that moment, a sliver of inspiration flickered to life within him. As they sketched and molded, the laughter echoed off the walls, pushing back against his hidden fears. But still, a shadow loomed, a reminder that the past could be a treacherous companion. He could feel it pressing against him as they moved into the practical aspect, building the models. What if they struggled? What if they were disappointed, whether with the results or with him as a figure of guidance? That nagging doubt wormed its way into his psyche while they gathered materials. Would they really come together to create something meaningful? Or would the process reveal his inadequacies rather than their strengths? In the midst of organizing supplies, a fierce burst of determination uncoiled within him. He would embrace failure, not just for himself, but for his children. They needed to see that the act of creating was synonymous with learning, and learning often bore the bruises of mistakes. He decided then that it was time to talk openly about the fears lurking in his past, to dismantle the myths he had woven around his shortcomings. "Hey everyone," he began slowly, the tremor of honesty lacing his voice. "I want you to know that building these models, it might not go how we planned. There could be mistakes, and that's okay. It's part of making something that is really ours." Jake, flipping through the sketches, paused, as if weighing his father's words. "Are you scared, Dad?" The question caught Tom off guard. Did his son sense the tremors of doubt? "Yeah, I am, but that's just part of the process. Scared opens the door to learning." As they continued to brainstorm and craft, Tom noticed how little by little raw vulnerability transformed into moments of shared empathy. This was not just a workshop. This was a shared exploration of fears stretched across the skyline of their new bridge. The paradox became his strength for embracing the unknown, both for himself and for his children. But as the afternoon sun waned, another thought gripped him. What if opening up led to them raising more questions than answers? Would their trust waver upon seeing him falter? For every cheer, there was an undercurrent of doubt threatening to engulf him as murky as the shadows of his past. Could this experience elevate them all, or would it drag them down? With his mind racing, Tom pondered if confronting these fears would shatter old patterns or simply reinforce the ghosts that lingered. The balance felt precarious, the stakes rising as he maneuvered through his vulnerabilities. There was no turning back now. This journey was just beginning, and he could feel the precipice of personal revelation ahead. But as the colors on the models began to blend together in a chaotic spectrum of imagination, he could not shake the realization that the true test was yet to come, the moment they would inevitably face disappointment, and the question lingered. How would they navigate it together? Tom awoke the next morning with an unfamiliar sense of anticipation. The workshop had been filled with laughter and creative energy, but that lingering doubt, the specter of self-doubt and fear, still hovered. Today, they would begin assembling the first model, a tangible representation of all their dreams interwoven into one structure. Tom felt an unsettling mixture of excitement and anxiety as he brewed the morning coffee, aware that the stakes had escalated dramatically. Sitting at the kitchen table, he plunged into the sketches from the previous day. They were vibrant and full of life, yet the ink felt like a blueprint for potential disaster. He could feel his heart race as he thought about their first attempt to build. What if it didn't hold together? What if his children felt disillusioned? "Let's do this!" Jake exclaimed, breaking through Tom's introspection, his youthful spirit igniting a flicker of hope within him. Tom chuckled, masking his apprehension, ready to follow his son's lead despite the tightness in his chest. The children rallied around him, their enthusiasm electric. While they gathered materials, Tom kept his hands moving, but within, he grappled with his own fears. As he sorted through cardboard and glue sticks, his past nagged at him, a constant reminder of how often he had retreated in the face of perceived failures. But he recognized that retreating was no longer an option. "Okay, how do we want to start?" he asked, trying to sound more confident than he felt. "What if we begin with a strong base, like if the foundation is solid, everything else can build on top of it?" Hannah suggested, her eyes shining with determination. "Yes," Tom replied, his voice thick with the weight of responsibility. "A strong foundation means we can all contribute." But as he spoke, he felt like a fraud, as if their ideas were immaculate and his own had long since faded. This creeping doubt was insidious. Could he become truly vulnerable with them? What about when things went south? The children dived into action, cutting and fastening parts together, each one oblivious to the introspective battle brewing within their dad. Tom stepped back, watching their small hands maneuver the materials with ease, and he felt a wave of pride wash over him. Yet, it was quickly followed by a darker thought. Could he disappoint them? "Dad, look!" Jake called out, his voice bursting with joy as he showed off a makeshift foundation made from layers of cardboard. For a moment, Tom was captivated, forgetting his own turmoil. It was an embodiment of collaboration and innovation, an example of trust projected outwardly. "Great job, buddy," Tom praised, but inside, he couldn't shake the thought. What if this was the moment where his children learned their father could fail when it mattered most? Would each misstep unravel their trust in him? The fear sent ripples of anxiety through him, and he clamped down hard on his breath. As they moved into the next phase of assembly, laughter bubbled, and Tom tried to push through his discomfort, clarifying their ideas on process and structure. But the moment the first piece was set in place and didn't quite align, an ominous silence fell. The weight of his unexpressed fears blossomed in his chest. "What do we do now?" Hannah asked, glancing at him. Faced with the moment he had dreaded, Tom inhaled deeply, feeling the walls of that childhood self-imposed fortress start to crumble. "We adjust. That's where the learning happens," he replied, this time more resolute. "Let's think about how we can troubleshoot together." The prospect of working through the mistakes brought them closer. Understanding began to replace doubt. They found humor in the mishaps, each failed attempt becoming a story they would recount for years to come. However, as they worked through adjustments, Tom's resolve wavered again. What if his optimism wasn't enough? As the sun dipped lower outside, casting long shadows across the room, he felt the emotional pressure tighten once again. Was the act of embracing failure truly opening a door for them, or simply spotlighting his cracks? Every time they celebrated a small victory, another shadow of doubt loomed, heavier than before, became increasingly difficult to ignore. The question now loomed larger than ever. Would they emerge stronger, bonded through this creative endeavor, or would the weights of expectation and disappointment split them? With every move they made, they oscillated dangerously between hope and fear, each moment teetering on the brink of profound revelation. And just as the glue began to dry on their latest project, an unexpected visitor appeared, a neighbor they hadn't seen in years, asking for help with a project of their own. Tom's heart raced. Would this be another chance to confront his hesitations or a distraction that could unravel everything they'd accomplished that day? Tom watched as the neighbor, Mr. Dawson, stood at the threshold of their garage, a perplexed smile on his face, looking at the disarray of cardboard, glue, and excited children. Over the years, Tom had distanced himself from many people in his life, including Mr. Dawson, whose own family dynamics had been tumultuous. The sight of his neighbor stirred a blend of nostalgia and apprehension within him. "Hey there! I was just wondering if you could lend a hand with my fence. It needs some serious reinforcement," Mr. Dawson said, scratching his head, as if unsure how to approach his request. Tom felt his chest tighten. Here was a call for help, echoing the burden he was trying to lift off his own shoulders. He had barely managed to keep his family engaged in their own creative project, and now this? The impulse to decline raced through him like wildfire, fueled by fear of inadequacy. What if he failed to fulfill both commitments? Just as he opened his mouth to decline, Jake chimed in. "Dad, we can help him. That way we can all learn more about building things together." The words struck Tom like lightning, illuminating the dark corners of his doubt. Could this be an opportunity for growth? A way to not only help a neighbor, but to demonstrate resilience and teamwork in front of his children? He glanced at Hannah and Jake, who were nodding enthusiastically, clearly on board with the idea. Tom felt a rush of conflicting emotions. Would stepping outside their workshop diminish what they were trying to accomplish? Or would it provide an invaluable lesson about community and support? "Okay, let's do it," Tom said, his voice steadier than he felt. The agreement established a sense of commitment, but the uncertainty still loomed. Their workshop project was now mingling with the unknown. As they helped load tools into their car, Tom reflected on his decision. There was a peculiar power in the acknowledgement of his fears, allowing them to intertwine with that fierce parental instinct to model perseverance and generosity for his children. Arriving at Mr. Dawson's yard felt like entering foreign territory. The wildflowers were overgrown, and the fence sagged dangerously, an echo of Tom's own emotional state. Standing there, with the burden of the impending task weighing on him, he took a deep breath. This was where he could explore his evolving self, where every decision would shape his understanding of vulnerability. "First, we need to assess what's wrong and gather some materials," Tom said, trying to sound authoritative, but inwardly he struggled to project confidence. "What if we take turns?" Hannah suggested, turning to Tom and Mr. Dawson. "If we divide the job and help each other, it'll be faster." Tom felt a flicker of pride at Hannah's suggestion, recognizing this was what he hoped to inspire in his children, a spirit of collaboration. Yet, he still grappled with the constant undercurrent of doubt lingering in his mind. Would their efforts genuinely result in something stable and strong? Or would this become another hasty endeavor fraught with failure? As the children began hauling wooden boards and tools, Mr. Dawson expressed gratitude, but inside, Tom sensed Mr. Dawson's hesitations mirrored his own. What if this experience ended in disappointment? The dread of that possibility laid heavy on Tom's shoulders. Throughout the task, Tom noticed how Jake and Hannah worked seamlessly with Mr. Dawson, their laughter brightening the drab surroundings. In contrast, he felt a storm brewing within himself, caught between excitement for their learning experience and the dread of slipping back into old habits of retreating under pressure. When they finally fitted a sturdy post in place, Tom's heart raced. Would this be a marker of success, or yet another fleeting moment of false confidence? As the sun dipped low in the sky, casting long shadows across the lawn, he realized, with each action, he was constructing not just a fence, but a new foundation for himself and his family. This revelation, of finding strength within shared vulnerability, felt exhilarating yet terrifying. Would they emerge today as a united front, or would this task expose cracks in their newfound cohesion? Eventually, as they stepped back to admire their work, a sudden realization gripped him. Maybe there was something deeper emerging from this experience, an unexpected connection, a growing sense of awareness, not just of his children's abilities, but also of his. And just as he began to feel a flicker of hope ignite within him, Mr. Dawson suddenly turned serious, his eyes narrowing as he said, "You know, Tom, there's something else I've been meaning to talk to you about." The tension was palpable as Tom's heart beat heavily in his chest. A chance for deeper connection, or a revelation that could shake the foundations he was starting to build? Tom's breath caught in his throat as he sensed the weight of Mr. Dawson's next words. The anticipation hung heavily in the air, each beat marked with uncertainty. What could he possibly want to discuss? The question reverberated in his mind, creating a whirlpool of anxieties, only solidifying the urgency to confront his own hesitations. "About the past," Mr. Dawson continued, shifting uncomfortably. "I know it's been years since well, there have been things unsaid between us." Tom's heart raced, the shadows of shared history creeping back. Memories he had meticulously tucked away began to resurface, those moments of discord and misunderstanding that had driven a wedge between them. Battling the urge to retreat, he met Mr. Dawson's gaze, showing a resolve he hardly felt. It was time to confront these ghosts, to peel back the layers of distance he had chosen to cultivate. "Yeah, I think we have some things to talk about," Tom replied, his voice steady, though shaky roots of doubt remained. The children seemed to sense the shift, peering from behind the towering fence, their faces a mixture of curiosity and concern. As they began tidying up the remnants of their labor, Mr. Dawson spoke of the long-lost camaraderie they once shared. He recalled the laughter, the neighborhood barbecues, and the camaraderie over shared struggles. For every moment Mr. Dawson reminisced, Tom felt a twinge stab at his chest, a bittersweet reminder of what he had preferred to forget. "You see, Tom, I know how hard it can be. My family went through a rough patch, much like yours might be now," Mr. Dawson said, the vulnerability in his tone disarming. "Isolation doesn't solve problems. It only magnifies them." This struck a chord deep within Tom. Was he really growing more resolute, or merely masking the turmoil? He glanced at his children, who stood clambering over the wood pieces, their innocence perhaps a fragile buffer against the complexities of adulthood. "Maybe we can help each other," Tom heard himself suggest, an unintentional offering of support that surprised even him. Here was a potential turning point, a willingness to not just stand by, but to step into the fray. If Mr. Dawson's past echoed his own struggles, perhaps they could build something worthwhile from that shared knowledge. But as thinkers often do, Tom's mind fluttered between hope and trepidation. What if this was simply a facade, an emotional diversion that would end in disappointment? Would resurrecting the past only expose deeper rifts? Suddenly, Jake's jubilant voice called out, "Look at what we made!" It pulled Tom from his spiraling thoughts and beckoned him to return to the present. The fence stood tall, sturdy, and unexpectedly beautiful, a symbol of progress, both tangible and personal. "Yeah, we really came together as a team," Hannah echoed, her exuberance palpable. Their achievements bore witness to their collective growth, a tapestry woven in shared labor and laughter. Chlorophyll surged in Tom's chest. This was what he wanted to model for them, a legacy of resilience, cooperation, and overcoming adversity. "That's true," Tom acknowledged, feeling the wrinkled edges of doubt gradually unravel as he turned to Mr. Dawson. "Let's keep this conversation going. Maybe we both could learn something valuable." The moment hung there, fraught with potential. Tom was wrestling with the gravity of connection, balancing on the edge of vulnerability against the instinct to shield himself from pain. "Absolutely, Tom. Think of it like building fences," Mr. Dawson replied, a faint smile curling at his lips, reframing the conversation. "You need to understand what's broken to create something stronger. and as they gradually stacked tools against the fence, Tom felt a dance of emotions churning within. Perhaps this unexpected dialogue could serve as a bridge, not just a masonry of wood and nails, but a pivotal moment in reclaiming what had once been lost. Speaking of broken things, Mr. Dawson paused, furrowing his brow before continuing. I've been worried about my son, Bobby. He's been struggling lately, and I was hoping maybe you could lend some insight, being that your kids have been thriving. The sudden direction of the conversation caught Tom off guard, raising new concerns and enlarging the scope of his own fears. The intricacies of neighborly help were tangling with the heavy responsibility of mentorship. To offer guidance when his own footing felt so precarious, was he ready for such nuances? His heart thundered as he looked at Mr. Dawson and then at Hannah and Jake, the weight of yet another challenge looming over him, and Tom realized the talk had only just begun. The sun dipped low in the sky, casting elongated shadows across the backyard where Tom stood, grappling with the implications of Mr. Dawson's request. The air felt thick with anticipation, each breath a reminder of the expectations laid upon him, not just by Mr. Dawson, but by himself. Could he offer words of wisdom to someone else when he often felt lost? Hannah and Jake remained animated, the laughter of their innocent joy contrasting starkly with the weight of the conversation unfolding around them. It hit Tom that while he worked to guide his children, he found himself being pulled into a role that felt daunting. Mentorship seemed both a privilege and an obligation, and suddenly the desire to avoid discomfort clashed with the necessity to grow. Bobby has been troubled, and I believe he feels disconnected. Mr. Dawson's voice broke through his reverie. I thought perhaps you might know how to bridge that gap. You seem to have a knack for understanding kids. Tom grappled with the notion of being perceived as wise. He was still wrestling with his own challenges, infusing stability into his household, navigating his fears, and confronting the demons of regret. What could he possibly know that might help another child? The uncertainty gnawed at him. Out of concern for Mr. Dawson, he wanted to help, yet the fear of inadequacy loomed. What if he spoke, and they were only more confused? He glanced back at his children, their ebullience offering a stark contrast to his inner turmoil. It was in those moments that he realized it wasn't about having all the answers. Rather, perhaps the best guidance came from a place of vulnerability and honesty. I can try, Tom stammered, surprising even himself with the depth of his commitment. What does Bobby like? What kinds of things is he interested in? Mr. Dawson's eyes widened, a flicker of hope igniting. He used to love building things, like me. We spent countless weekends working on model rockets together. But he hasn't had the enthusiasm lately. The mention of building struck a familiar chord within Tom. The fence they had just constructed stood as a testament to the power of teamwork and discovery. Perhaps he could channel that spirit into something meaningful for Bobby. We could create a project together, he suggested, unearthing the instinct to reach out beyond his own home. Maybe if he sees that building can be a way to express himself again, it might spark something. Mr. Dawson's expression shifted, overflowing with gratitude. That would mean the world to him, and to me, he admitted softly. But I know what you're thinking, Tom interrupted, sensing Mr. Dawson's hesitation. It's daunting to let someone into your struggles. But sometimes, the act of constructing something with others can reveal that the pieces come together just like our lives. Time seemed to elongate as Tom reflected on his own fears juxtaposed against Bobby's struggles. He understood isolation all too well, and the idea that Bobby could find hope in a shared experience felt like a way to bridge the chasm that loneliness created. As the sun dipped behind the trees, an overwhelming wave washed over him. He felt a sense of resolve. The initiative was no longer merely about being Tom the father or the neighbor offering advice. It was about becoming Tom the mentor, a role which demanded authenticity. By stepping into this position, he had an opportunity to confront not only Bobby's challenges, but also his own fears of inadequacy. The children's laughter echoed fleetingly, a reminder of innocence and the power of connection. If he could guide Bobby, he might also learn something invaluable in the process, something that perhaps might dismantle the barriers he had built around his own heart. With newfound determination, Tom looked at Mr. Dawson, who seemed to radiate hope. "Let's set up a time to brainstorm ideas for a project with Bobby. We can meet this weekend." A sense of anticipation replaced Tom's earlier doubts. He sensed the conversation transitioning from shadows of the past toward the promise of future endeavors. "We'll figure this out together," he reassured Mr. Dawson, planting the seeds of collaboration. As they parted ways for the evening, one thought resonated deeply. Would the act of reaching out, even amid uncertainty, illuminate paths for both Bobby and himself? The potential of this venture sparked within him a yearning to connect, both with Mr. Dawson and with Bobby. But as excitement swelled, Tom couldn't shake the fear of stumbling into new territory. The weight of responsibility began to settle back into the pit of his stomach. What if Bobby resisted? What if he fell short, failing at the mentoring job he had just signed up for? The looming challenge sharpened into focus. The time had come to explore not just the vulnerability of others, but also his own capacity to lead. The quiet hum of anticipation lingered in Tom's mind as he sat at the kitchen table, scribbling notes for Bobby's project. The sunlight streamed through the window, illuminating the blank pages before him, but his thoughts remained cloudy. He had failed to recognize that the task he had taken on was as much about being a mentor as it was about confronting his own internal battles. As he crafted his vision, audiences of self-doubt gathered like dark clouds. What if Bobby didn't respond well? What if his ideas failed to spark any joy or enthusiasm? Each doubt convulsed within him, threatening to deter the momentum he had begun to build. Even as he fought these demons, he couldn't shake the feeling that something profound was awakening in him, an inkling that perhaps mentorship could serve as his own means of redemption. "Focus on what you can offer, not what you fear," he whispered to himself. It was an echo of encouragement to transform those fears into actionable steps, not just for Bobby's sake, but for his own growth. The evening arrived when he would meet Mr. Dawson to discuss the project. Tom tried to ignore the gnawing dread in his stomach, replacing it instead with a mindset focused on learning and collaboration. As he observed Mr. Dawson fidgeting with his hands in awkward excitement, Tom was reminded of the shared vulnerability each bore. They were both stepping out of their comfort zones, trying to build something meaningful amid uncertainty. "We could design a model rocket," Tom began, his voice steadying. "It can represent rising above challenges, both for Bobby and for us. We'll craft a space for him to reconnect with what he loves. We'll add our own stories to the build." Mr. Dawson's eyes lit up, but beneath that joy lingered fear. But what if he rejects the idea? What if he cannot regain that spark? "Then we adapt," Tom replied, feeling a surge of confidence. "Kids can have fluctuating interests. Our aim must be to engage him on his terms, to be present and encourage exploration." As they sketched ideas together, the fears that had haunted Tom gradually dissipated. The paper transformed into a canvas of innovation, where two fathers grappled with their own doubts while nurturing the potential within a boy. This moment transcended the mere mechanics of building. It was a reflection of their own journeys, entwined with the tender threads of fatherhood and vulnerability. Within this collaborative effort, Tom discovered that mentorship was not just about imparting knowledge. It was a dialogue, an exchange of experiences. The more they exchanged ideas, the more he felt his self-imposed limitations begin to lift. With each stroke of the pen, he began to see not just a model rocket, but a metaphor for rebirth. His past failures, fears, and regrets turning into a new foundation upon which he could stand taller than before. By the time they concluded their planning, Tom felt transformed, a blend of trepidation and excitement fueling his spirit. "We're not just helping Bobby, we're rediscovering ourselves," he said, surprised at his own insight. The conversation shifted as they finalized plans for the following weekend, But one singular thought punctured through the air, sharpening Tom's focus. What if every challenge Bobby faced was also a mirror reflecting his own? Each obstacle they might encounter, not only for the boy, but also for Tom, as he ventured deeper into leadership, commitment, and self-discovery. As they parted ways, Tom's pulse raced with anticipation for what lay ahead. He could almost feel the thrill of creation waiting to be unleashed. But his momentum was undercut by a chilling realization. His journey was about to deepen, not just with Bobby, but with the truths that had long remained hidden within him. The time had not only come to guide another, it was indeed the moment to confront himself, the man he had been, and the man he aspired to become. Would he find the fortitude to face the shadows of his past, or would the past extinguish his drive to ignite hope in another? Tom woke with a sense of urgency, the sun filtering through his windows as if beckoning him toward a day of profound potential. This day would not be just about Bobby. It would herald a new chapter in his own life. As he sipped his coffee, a plan formed, resonating deep within him, a commitment to fully embrace the mentorship role he had hesitantly stepped into. The drive to Mr. Dawson's house thrummed with purpose. His mind buzzed with the lessons he would share, bridging his journey with Bobby's through art and engineering. Fear flickered momentarily, threatening to entangle him, but Tom inhaled sharply, grounding himself in the present. He would not shy away from the inevitable challenges. He would seize them, demonstrating resilience as much for Bobby's sake as for his own transformation. Arriving at Mr. Dawson's home, Tom noticed how the yard seemed to soften under the morning light, a symbol, perhaps, of new beginnings. As he stepped inside, he found Bobby waiting anxiously in the living room, a young boy burdened by quiet struggles and unfulfilled dreams. Tom took a deep breath, positioned himself as an anchor of support, and felt a warmth in his heart that reflected his intent. Their encounter would not just be about building a model rocket. It would be a testament to learning, growth, and overcoming obstacles together. "Hey, Bobby," Tom greeted, his voice steady. "I'm excited to work with you today. Have you thought about what kind of rocket you'd like to make?" Bobby shrugged, eyes darting nervously. Tom could sense his apprehension. I don't know if I can do it." There it was, the very fear that had taunted Tom for years, now taking shape in a young boy's voice. "Can I share a secret?" Tom asked, kneeling down to Bobby's level. "This is only my second time doing something like this too. It can be challenging, but together we can navigate those challenges. That's where the fun and learning happens." The boy hesitated, then nodded slowly, intrigued by the relatability. As they dug into the materials spread across the table, ideas flowed between them, framing a bond forged in vulnerability. For every misstep in construction, laughter echoed, transforming anticipated disappointment into moments of discovery. Bobby's face began to radiate enthusiasm, the flicker of creativity sparking to life. "Let's try using these materials for the body. It can be colorful," Bobby exclaimed, enthusiasm creeping into his voice. "Absolutely! A rocket needs character." Tom mirrored Bobby's excitement, feeling the walls of uncertainty crumble. As they crafted together, Tom realized that with each piece they assembled, he was not only instilling confidence in Bobby, he was reclaiming his own sense of purpose. "See," Tom said, pointing out the connection between their two dreams. "Your rocket is taking shape just as my hopes have begun to." Bobby looked reflective. "You're starting again too?" His voice was small. "Yep, and it feels great," Tom smiled, understanding how their parallel paths were rapidly evolving into a shared journey. Time slipped away in a whirlwind of creativity and laughter until the rocket modeled a vivid representation of both their aspirations. And in that moment, surrounded by materials and emerging dreams, Tom felt a surge of wholeness wash over him. A correctness in this effort to bridge the gap between past fears and future potential. "Let's take it outside," he said, urgency bubbling within him. As they stepped into the backyard and prepared for the first test launch, Tom felt the same tingles of excitement he had as a child, each heartbeat synchronizing with Bobby's palpable thrill. When the rocket soared into the sky, breaking free from the constraints of Earth, an overwhelming realization struck Tom. This was more than a model rocket. It was liberation. He had risen from the shadows of fear, armed with the wisdom of failure and passion, transcending the cycle of regret that once haunted him. Standing with Bobby beside Mr. Dawson, Tom recognized that he had conquered more than just self-doubt. He had ignited a flame of hope for Bobby's future. The smiles on their faces were vibrant testaments to newfound confidence, a communal recognition of progress. Later that evening, as Tom tucked his children into bed, he reflected on the day's transformation. Each interaction, every fear faced, had delineated a path forward that was bright and clear. No longer a figure bound to his past, he had embraced this role of mentor, leaving behind the shackles of former failures. Before dozing off, Tom whispered to himself, "I've built bridges where walls once stood." That night, he slept soundly for the first time in years, filled with the clarity of purpose and the joy of shared dreams. This was a beginning, true personal growth manifested through guiding others, a phenomenon altogether satisfying. Tom emerged from that day not just as a father or mentor, but as a solid, confident man ready to tackle whatever life had to throw his way, unfettered by fear, ignited by promise. Join us in celebrating personal transformations. Subscribe now to witness more inspiring journeys like Tom's. Don't wait even one more second to click that like button to fuel more incredible stories. Share this adventure with at least 5 friends who need motivation in their lives, and comment below with your theories or thoughts on Tom's powerful evolution. This is your chance to support uplifting narratives, make your voice heard,